computer.
Recording in progress.
There you go. So, because obviously I'm gonna record this thing for the people that cannot make it, but I see that there's already quite a lot of people. Now, funny thing is that I haven't done this for quite some time, these webinars. I've been busy, I've been traveling, I've been working places, you name it all. So I thought, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna kick this off. I've asked you guys about, or at least the training community on our Zoospensefull groups, about what I should do this webinar on. And interestingly, there's a lot of very good topics. Now, I try to put them all in this webinar for you, all right? So, but what I'm also going to do is I'm going to also talk about how I see this whole choice thing, how I see training, how I work through challenges in various parks, how I work through behavior, behavior goals with different facilities and so on. So that's what I'm going to share with you guys, all right? So don't think that if you get out of this webinar that you know exactly how choices work and all that stuff. I'm going to give you an idea where I come from when we talk about choice, when we talk about all these little words and how I implement that to make the easiest and most basic animal training systems. That's kind of what I'm going to do, and I hope to inspire you along the way, all right? So at the same time, at the very end of this webinar, we have the questions part, all right? So I have just a half an hour, or just, you know what, if it's half an hour, if it's 45 minutes, I can sit here actually for a long time chatting about animal training. So whatever questions come at the end, and I hope there will be some. So the cool thing is we have so many people from all over the world, really, which is fantastic. So welcome, welcome, welcome. I haven't responded to just everybody just yet, but Italy is here too. Fantastic. France, I see a lot of people. Fantastic. Thank you very much for coming. All right, so let me start this whole process. Let's see if I still know how this works. There we go. All right, so now if you have any questions, please write them down, and then at the very end we will actually take the questions if you like. If you have any, hopefully you will. So what we're going to talk about today, and like I can talk about this topic again for a very, very long time because I'm quite passionate about these topics, especially if we can easily increase the welfare of our animals. So welcome everybody. My name is Peter Gilgium. I'm the owner and founder of Zoospensefull, and today we're going to talk about choice is a skill, building reliable ethical training across species. That's kind of what we're going to talk about. Hello Jenna, very nice to see you again. Great that you're here as well. Okay, so at first, let me see. There we go. A little bit about me. I'm training animals for quite some time. I'm working a lot with zoological facilities, a lot with marine mammal parks, aquariums, and so on. My list goes on and on and on of all the animals I've had the privilege to work with. Now, I tried to grab some cases that actually really stand with me to explain my story, but you know, I've worked at many places as well, and I started in the Netherlands, and that's where I'm from. I'm very, very Dutch. I started in Ouwehands Dierenpark, which is a zoo in the middle of the country, and I kind of worked there for about 5 years, I think. And then through conferences I've been to, IMATA conferences, which is the International Marine Animal Trainers Association. Through that, I got started to build quite a network, and that's how I got into Canada. So I worked at Marine and Canada for about 2 years, which was very, very joyful, very, very cold, very nice in Niagara Falls, very good. So after this, I ended up in Loro Park. Now my goal was always to work with orcas. Now that was one of my dreams. So after Marine and Canada, I moved to Loro Park, and I actually started to work with the killer whales, or the orcas, which was a fantastic experience where I learned so much about animal training and our training techniques and how they have an effect on the animals, and how important relationships are and how you can build these relationships and so on. So a very good learning opportunity for me. Now after 1.5 years, I decided to move again, and I moved to Marineland, France, where I had to work, where I worked for 1 year. After this 1 year, I had the opportunity to come to Sweden to Kolmaren Zoo, where I worked at first as a senior dolphin trainer. And then after that, they asked me to become the training coordinator out there. So then I started to build the program across the park. Now, what I found very, very interesting was actually that the skills that I've learned along the way with marine mammals were not necessarily applied in zoological facilities. So the interesting thing was like, okay, you know what? Can we actually apply these same strategies? And at the end of the day, we're just talking about classical conditioning and operant conditioning and all those little techniques. So I found that a lot of cultures within the park. You had the birds of prey, the traditional falconry, you had the free contact elephants, you had the camels, you had the marine mammals itself, you had the carnivores, all different training cultures. But then I thought, hey, you know what? That should actually be that should actually all just be explained through operant conditioning and classical conditioning instead of building these cultures and things. That's why I started to write about it, and that's how Zoospensefull was created. Now, interestingly, I never had the plan to make it a consulting business and so on. It just happened to be that way. So I'm actually very happy about it now. So I'm doing consulting around the world. I do workshops, I give webinars, I do courses online, I do a whole lot of stuff. So then I had the opportunity to move to Australia, to SeaWorld, to work there as their training coordinator. Now in between, I forgot to mention, I was also at Dierenpark Amersfoort, which is back in the Netherlands, where I also worked as an animal training coordinator. So I started to build really this experience of, hey, you know what, how can we create behavior programs with the highest standards of welfare for the animals? Now, I'm a firm believer of the fact that the animal is always right. So if we see behaviors that we decide are undesirable, or we see problem behaviors and so on, those are behaviors in our eyes which are problems. In our eyes, they're undesirable. But the animal will always have a reason for it. Therefore, the animal is always right. Okay, so that's how I kind of go through my career at the moment, because then I open myself up to my own potential mistakes. I open myself up to, hey, what do I do to trigger that specific behavior to happen and so on, and then we can start changing things, which is what I kind of gonna talk about in a little bit as well. So this is kind of my career. I'm doing this already for 20 plus years, and over time we actually helped quite some collections as well. Now I do this together with Grant Carter, who's actually now in Mandai Wildlife Park. He is as well the behavior coordinator out there. He's doing a fantastic job, and I'm doing this together with him. So we work with quite some facilities around the world, building programs, doing workshops, helping them out. We have been in various conferences like the ICZ, like the IMATA conference and so on, to actually present about what we do. So quite a lot of stuff. Anyway, enough about myself. Let's dig deep into this whole behavior thing, which is what I think it's very cool. I'm going to talk about a lot of different topics because I've been, thrown a lot of topics. There's a lot of topics thrown at me, and I thought I want to talk about all of them, but I only have 1 hour, so I just try to create this storyline through, especially talking about that choice is a skill, building reliable, ethical training across a species. Now, and that's why I keep on saying the animal is always right, because if we have that mindset in our training programs with training our animals, we actually will already build reliable and ethical training across species, because only then we're able to apply the operant conditioning, classical conditioning skills right away with the animal, because we start to reflect to ourselves. And I find that the best trainers, they are very good at self-reflection, and they're very good at understanding what their behavior does and triggers to the animals they are working with, which is Cool, always very, very cool to see. All right. So, but at first, operant conditioning. I think everybody kind of who is in this beautiful presentation. I hope that everybody knows what it is. But let me very quickly go through it because it adds on to a very specific detail, which I think many of us actually. I don't want to say forget, but actually sometimes, yeah, look, do not focus on too much. But let me get into it. Let me explain this to you. Now, operant conditioning, we have reinforcement, which is something which increases behavior. It could be anything really. And we have punishment, is something which decreases behavior. Now, that's essentially what it is. So it does not matter if it's good or bad. The definition is just reinforcement means that the behavior will increase. Punishment means the behavior will decrease. Now, but they cannot go with positive and negative, as we know. So you have positive, which is in science means we add something. Negative in science means we take something away. So if we put them all together, what happens is positive reinforcement, we add something which increases the behavior. That's basically what we do. Positive punishment, we add something which decreases the behavior. Negative reinforcement, we take something away which increases the behavior. That's the goal at the end. Negative punishment, the goal is to decrease behavior, and we do that by taking something away because that's what negative means. So, and those are based on consequences, which we have to remember. Very often we say, yeah, but that's what this is or what this is. No, it's a consequence. So anytime you say, hey, I ask my animal to do something and I directly throw the cookie or a piece of meat or a carrot or whatever, that moment of consequence that you applied right there, which is where we talk about positive reinforcement, that timing you need for every consequence to make it work. Because timing is incredibly important to make operant conditioning work with animals, really. So that means that I cannot reinforce something which happened 5 minutes ago, unless I train them a delayed reinforcer, which is a possibility as well. So timing is incredibly important. Now, what's interesting, if you look back at all the science, the videos from Mr. Skinner, for example, who came up with this thing, who built this on the law of effect from Mr. Thorndike. If you look at it very carefully, we can actually see that operant conditioning is based on capturing spontaneously occurring behavior. That's what operant conditioning is based off of. So a behavior happens, no cues are given, nothing. The environment is set up where behavior is most likely to happen, the behavior you're looking for, right? We call this antecedent arrangement, really. There's no cues are given, no signals, no triggers, no nothing. And you are just sitting there waiting till the behavior happens what you're looking for. And then the timing of your reinforcer, in that case, is very crucial because that behavior you want to see happen again or not. This all happens when you don't give cues, no nothing. You're just sitting there, behavior happens, you focus on what you want to do, and you reinforce for it if you want to increase it. That's what it comes down to. And that's what the whole operant conditioning system is. Now, the reason I'm explaining this is I'm still learning a whole lot of stuff in the animal training world. What I try to do, working with so many trainers across different countries, working with so many fantastic trainers, having fantastic discussions and so on, I'm trying to simplify the science because at the end of the day, I'm actually a zookeeper. I'm actually a zookeeper with a passion of behavior, which I decided to read more upon, to dive into, to test, to see if it works, to see what Mr. Skinner said, how it works in practice, and so on. So that's kind of what I've done in the last 15, 20 years or so. So, and then I also learned that, hey, wait a second, if I really look at it and if I make it very simple, then at the end of the day, operant conditioning is just based on capturing behavior. Now, you see, in the dog world, they're actually doing this a whole lot. In the zoo world, we do this a lot less, which actually maybe we should do more of and think more about if we are in the zoological facilities, because it's going to help us a lot. While in the people with the dogs and also the horses, actually, you guys are using this a lot with great outcomes. It's beautiful to watch how you guys train these magnificent dogs and horses at home. Anyway, so that's kind of what it comes down to. Now, this is a video, maybe you've seen it before. This is very typical how that worked at operant conditioning part.
And we're going to try another pigeon now, and I will try to pick out some particular pattern of behavior and make it a more frequent part of the repertoire of the bird. Very fine. This bird has been already conditioned to eat when the magazine sounds and the light flashes. Now we'll just watch its behavior a bit. It's not doing anything in particular, you see, but I'm going to try to get it to do something. Suppose I shape up the behavior of making a complete turn. What I do is simply, as I did then, to wait for some part of that behavior. There's more of it, you see. You can see that the effect is instantaneous. I'm waiting for it to turn counterclockwise now. And then I reinforce that movement. And I wait for a more pronounced movement than that. It's got to be more than that. There we go, all the way around.
Right, so as you could see, he actually doesn't give any cues. He doesn't give any signals or nothing. He just stands there and is capturing what the pigeon is doing. Now I'm going to show you another video. This is a little Arctic fox, and the Arctic fox has learned to go into the transport box, but it's based on capturing behaviors. There's no signals given. The trainer is just looking at which approximation goes a little bit further into the transport box. Okay, so have a look.
Yeah. 1 foot inside. 2 feet inside.
As you could see, that the trainer is actually just building that behavior by capturing slowly a bit more, a bit more, a bit more, a bit more. And that's essentially what operant conditioning is built upon, really. Oh. So, what I'm going to with this whole story is that we're looking into the ABCs. That's essentially what we are looking into. Now, the ABCs is, I'm a very big fan of the ABCs because it's antecedent, which is the signal or the trigger or the cue. Then the behavior follows and the consequence comes. So, whatever I do, behavior after happens. Now, very often I'm part of the environment, and a change in the environment means a change in behavior. If I see the behavior that I like, I will then reinforce it. That's what it comes down to. So I can actually manipulate the environment to see a behavior that I'd like to see happen more often, to then actually apply that capturing behavior strategy, and then I just apply a reinforcer. That's what it comes down to. Now, if you are very skilled at this and start to understand, hey, which behavior triggers what, and hey, which behavior is reinforced here and which behavior is not reinforced, you can actually figure out fairly quickly why the animals behave the way they do, especially if you look at the environment and one by one take variables away. For example, which could be the distance of me to the animals, which could be a bucket I bring, which could be a second person I brought, which could be a specific smell that I brought with me if we talk about medical training, which could be the laptop I bring. Whatever it is which triggers that behavior, there's always something in the environment which triggers a behavior to happen. All right. So, and then there's the consequence that comes often after, especially when the behavior happens more often. The science basically says if the behavior happens more often or it's maintained, it's because there's a reinforcer in play. And the reinforcement doesn't have to be you. It could also be If I walk indoors because that's where it's cooler than outside, then the temperature change already potentially reinforces going inside. It goes that fast and that easy. But if we understand it very well, we can actually apply a whole lot of strategies to it, which also makes me come later on to choices, for example. So essentially, if you look at the ABCs, very simply explained, if we talk classical conditioning or associative learning, that's basically the antecedent and behavior. That's where that connection is made. Then you have behavior and consequence. That's what it's the operant conditioning, operant learning. That's what operant conditioning is behavior consequence. So either the behavior decreases or the behavior increases. That's kind of what operant conditioning does. So, and what we're going to look at, and that's where the choice spectrum comes in, because to be honest, we talk a lot about choice and control. We talk a lot about choices here, choices there. It's the animal's choice to do this, and it's the animal choice to do that. But it's extremely complicated to define choices. Extremely complicated. It's not just a matter of yes, no. It's a lot more. For example, if I look at myself, sometimes I like to go outside. Sometimes I don't like to go outside. And now you can put a whole lot of reinforcement outside, but sometimes I just don't feel it. So, do I now just need to reinforce more there? Do I now need to reinforce more inside? There's apparently something inside which is still better than me going outside. But tomorrow that might change completely, depending on how I feel, really. So that's what makes choices so incredibly difficult. But what it essentially all comes down to is, in my eyes, in my experience, is creating a language between an alien species and us to figure out the preferences and which choices that is. That's kind of what we're trying to achieve with animal training. Now, that sounds super simple, but it's very, very hard because there's a ton of variables in play, especially when I talk about the people that work in teams in the zoological facility, in the marine mammal park, in an aquarium, and so on. If you work in a team, there's even more variables in play. So that's why it's so difficult for me to actually talk about choices. But I'm going to try my best, and I'm going to explain to you how I see this whole thing and how we can work with it. Because I still believe that, yes, there are specific choices. How it works, that's the difficulty. But how can we make that very clear for the animal that there is some kind of understanding between choices at the end? That's kind of where I'm trying to go to. So I really like to really push it to the power of reinforcement, because I do think that reinforcement does increase animal welfare, and reinforcement does increase the behaviors we like to see, so, and there's a specific power to it. I've tried a whole lot of stuff with reinforcement in ways that, what if I only apply one of the same reinforcement, and what if I apply that very predictable? So I would just do this. Well done. Well done. And I do this nonstop. And then I'm just going to look at what is the effect of the animal by me applying the reinforcer that way. It's a very interesting thing to see. Then I'm going to do this. I'm going to do the same. I'm going to reinforce at the same time, but I'm going to change my language. Yes, here's a reinforcer. Yes, here's another reinforcer. Yes, here's a... And I'm going to see if that changes, even if I use the same reinforcer now. Then I'm going to see, what if I add a different type of reinforcer? What does that do to the animal's learning curve? Or what does that do to the animal's motivation to work with me? Or to work as a team with me and to reach the goals that we have laid out for each other. So, and then I start to work with amounts of reinforcement and adding conditioned reinforcement. Just see how the animal changes its motivation and how quick. So it's a little bit of a project. So I've tried this with dolphins. I've also tried this with a ton of other animals to see if it was similar. And I came with the same outcomes. So, which for me comes then down to balance of reinforcement. Now, I talk about this quite a lot because I believe that if you have two behaviors, basically, it's often never, or often never, I believe it's never the the same value. We can never say that, because for us to be able to say, hey, each behavior has the same strength, we need to ask the animal that. We cannot conclude it ourselves. For ourselves, it's just an observation where we like to interpret a specific behavior we see, which confirms that one behavior is equal to the other or one is stronger than the other. But that has anything to do with the balance of reinforcement, for example. And the balance of reinforcement already changes when I do this. Well done, I clap and I'm all happy, regardless if I give a primary reinforcement, which is a food source, for example. So by me doing that, I already changed the balance of reinforcement. So, and that goes so fast. That's why it's so hard for us to actually say, hey, it made a choice out of its own decision to do behavior 1 over behavior 2, or if it's a biased choice because one has a higher balance of reinforcement than the other one without us even realizing this. So it looks like a genuine choice, but actually it's not whatsoever. So, and that's why I find it so difficult to talk about these choices. But again, I still believe we have to keep on looking into those, because I still don't think we know enough. So anyway, so the balance of reinforcement. It's a very big thing. Maybe you guys saw the emergency recalls that we've implemented in 2015-16 was all about balance of reinforcement. Balance of reinforcement and variable reinforcement schedules. That's basically what we applied, which created the success of the emergency recall. If you haven't seen it, go to our YouTube channel and then just type in emergency recall and you see some cool videos. Anyway, so essentially what I'm going to do is I'm going to change the balance of reinforcement. I do it either accidentally or I do it on purpose. Now, like you see here, I use meat now for a reason. I'll show you in a bit. But one behavior has a stronger reinforcement than the other, a stronger reinforcement history. All right. So that's kind of how you see it then. So the more reinforcement we add, the stronger the behavior becomes. It's very simple. Now, this is the interesting thing. To make a behavior strong, the timing of reinforcement should be good. That also means that if I say animal, let it be a start of session signal or a come to me. It's I think the easiest one to talk about. I ask the animal to come. I decide to reinforce like this. Well done. Well done. Well done. We can now start to discuss if my third, fourth, or fifth piece, maybe our second even as well, are reinforcing the call over behavior. Or am I now just reinforcing staying with me? That's discussable. Do I want to be sure about this? What I do is, animal comes to me and I directly throw all my pieces to you. Here, done, finished, see you later. What happens now is that the call over behavior becomes so much stronger all of a sudden, because I added a reinforcer directly. Now that's the same for if I have a target. They touch the target in a split second and I directly say, here, butts, a lot of reinforcement. What's going to happen is that the animal wants to touch that target so badly because the balance of reinforcement and the strength on that behavior is so much stronger. Same for that call over. Therefore, there's some trainers that have some challenges with the recalls and call overs. And this is basically the reason what I believe that an animal comes to you and you reinforce them like this. One piece, well done. One piece, well done. One piece, well done. Then eventually your reinforcement is not connected to the quick call over anymore. It's now something else you're reinforcing. Might that be a head twitch? Might that be a mouth open? Might that be anything? But what you want is a quick call over that directly means you come, party, see you later. Or party, great. Now we start to ask different behaviors. Might that be training blood samples? Might that be you training a spin around? Might that be give me your hoof? Or and so on. Anyway, that's how like the balance of reinforcement now all of a sudden switches. Which then directly means that if we're not aware of this, that the animal is actually choosing one behavior over the other due to the fact that the balance of reinforcement is higher or weighs heavier for one behavior than the other, because that's what we have created. So is it then really a choice the animal made, or did we create that for them? And it's logic that they will make that decision because of the reinforcement history, because the balance of reinforcement on that behavior is a lot higher. There's a discussion point. So This is where differential reinforcement comes in, because that's exactly what we do. So what you do is you basically reinforce one behavior more than the other. That's essentially what you're doing. And it's based on, coming back to the operant conditioning system, it's based on simply capturing spontaneously occurring behavior. That's essentially what you're doing, because I reinforce this behavior over that behavior. That's differential reinforcement for you. And that's how Mr. Skinner started his process of that whole differential reinforcement system. So I reinforce one behavior over the other. Now there's various ones. We have the behavior we choose is incompatible to the problem behavior. It is a DRI. So if I see a behavior which I don't like, but the animal also has its reasons for it, but that behavior, I don't like it, so I'm now going to choose a behavior which I'm going to reinforce, which is incompatible to the behavior I don't like. That's basically what I do, based on capturing or reinforcing spontaneously occurring behavior. If that behavior is incompatible to the behavior I don't like to see, it's a DRI. If it doesn't matter, really, it's a DRO. So I'm just reinforcing any other behavior at the end of the day. Now, what I find interesting, and I was once at a park, and the lady, and this is like very early in my career, this lady told me, Peter, at the end of the day, we never really use DRIs and DROs in our marine parks and zoological facilities. Now, believe it or not, we are years and years further. Me reading books, me doing my research and understanding behavior a lot better, I now discover what she meant by that. And it's true, if you have a specific challenge in your exhibit, or with your dog at home, or a horse, or whatever, or even your cat, basically, if I want to apply a DRI, no problem. But at the end of the day, the hard thing about this is, am I now just going to sit there the whole day reinforcing incompatible behavior based on capturing behavior? Or am I still going to start my session and give an end of session signal and do it in between? The hard thing about this whole system, and I will get into behavior analysis really, is that I cannot sit there all day long and do this system if I'm in a zoological facility or a marine park or even with your horses, because you're not non-stop there with your animals. So they will practice the other behavior that we don't like to see when we are not there, because there's a high likelihood that they connect us to the other behavior. So maybe we're cueing it anyway due to the change of environment which we placed ourselves in. So there's a lot of discussable points there. Now, and therefore, I'm a very big fan of the DRA instead, which is again a differential reinforcement of alternative behavior. So I'm basically teaching the animal, hey, if you're doing this alternative behavior in that situation, then you'll have a chance of reinforcement again. For example, I have to teach them this alternative behavior first. And there's the difference. So we essentially don't really use a DRI much. We don't really use a DRO much. Now, coming from the marine mammal world, and this is another learning curve I had, the fact that we always said if an animal shows aggressive behavior, which is potentially a sea lion coming, chasing you, barking or whatever, we ask a behavior which is incompatible. We always thought that that was a DRI. But actually it's not, because you already responded to the behavior you don't like to see by asking another behavior. So you responded to it already. So it's not a DRI, it's actually a redirection, and the behavior you chose is incompatible to that aggressive behavior you've seen. But you already responded. Well, differential reinforcement is based on spontaneously occurring behavior, and I just pinpoint what I like. That's what I like. That's what I like. That's what I like. Well, if back in the day, I had an aggressive animal, I would teach them, if I ask you to lie down, you lie down right away if you're trying to chase me, basically. So I redirect it. Now, and I always thought that that was a DRI, but I've learned, and it was actually not. So we're going to talk more about the DRA instead. Because why does the animal make the choice to do one behavior over the other? Well, it might be balance of reinforcement. It might be differential reinforcement we apply without us knowing. All right? Then making a conscious decision between two or more options has so many variables. It's incredible. It might as well be your coworker that worked the day before that reinforced one behavior a little bit more than the other. Well, you actually look for the other behavior, but you never get it because the other behavior has more reinforcement history. And you're like, what's happening here? Well, your team is now a variable all of a sudden that we put in play. So There's so many variables, and for us to do it properly, we have to create such a strong system to take away all these variables for us to see what was the preference in that decision, and was it a real decision is the question. So it's quite rough, you know. There you go, same. You know what, Mary, I think that's a very good point, because I've actually tried, and I have so much respect for dog consulting trainers who go to families and stuff. I've tried this. It's not really my gig. I learned a lot from you guys. That's definitely for sure. And exactly what you say. Often the team is the family you're going to, or even your own family with dogs. I have the privilege to live together with another family who has two dogs, a pug and a border collie, believe it or not. Beautiful to watch. But exactly, that's your team, and that's the same with the team in the zoological facility. That's the same at a horse stable. That's the same at. So you reflected very well there, Mary. Thank you for your comment. So in animal training, we often think the animal made his own choice. Was it actually a true choice? That's the next question. So there's these days, and I'm in these discussions with various facilities as well. Well, we talk a lot about what is the definition of choices, what does that reflect to with the animals, how does that all work, and we still do not come to a definition. So it's very, very difficult. I just want to point out that we as animal behaviorists, animal trainers, that we have to be careful that we quickly throw out, or it was an animal's choice, while we actually are not sure about this. Because if we do so, we take a lot of reinforcing opportunities away for ourselves. We take a lot of proper discussions away for ourselves, and we take a lot of potential details away, which makes us understand the animal better. So very often, if we do not know the answer, a lot of trainers actually directly say, well, then it was his choice. But it doesn't matter. The question is, hey, that's interesting. What triggered that behavior? That's how we have to look at it. And what maintains it? And then we can see, okay, hey, you know what? That behavior is actually reinforced a lot more than the other, one way or the other. Let me talk about these lines very quickly. This is a typical case of implementing a DRA. This took us about like 6 months, I think. So this was one of the first days I was there in this facility. So I stopped it, but there's a lot going on. All right, there's a lot going on. So the whole thing is that the interesting part here is that like animals are pacing all the time, and the trainer is standing there trying to reinforce, trying to get a cut contact. This trainer is not necessarily busy with what behavior am I reinforcing. This trainer is just standing there. Okay, hey, I need contact to gate my animals. But these animals are pacing and pacing and pacing. Now, I've seen this before in other facilities, and the outcome, and that's what we know, because the animals just doing this because of their reason, so they're not incorrect. We just see it as undesirable because it can give medical complications, and in this case, they could get bloody paws and all that stuff. So anyway, so we wanted to change this completely. So we wanted to teach them making their choice the right choice. Now, the first thing what we have to figure out is like, hey, what's happening here? Well, it's a very easy observation, and that is pacing weighs a lot heavier than any other behavior. Now, what we wanted to teach them was a lie-down behavior, because the lie-down behavior is actually incompatible to pacing. So, therefore, it says lie-down there. But pacing weighs heavier, so that has a bigger history, a longer history, as you see the trainers trying to reinforce it as well. So it has also a reinforcement history there. All right. So at the same time, the animal might choose that behavior to release a specific emotion they have. We cannot forget that neither. But pacing all the time. So what we want to do in that case, we want to teach the animal without further signals that they decide the session is going to start. That's what I want to teach them, because anytime they come in, they directly pace, and they pace forever. So I want to teach them something else. So we're going to teach them that they can communicate this to us to start the session by lying down. So if you lie down, we start the session. That's the goal. So if you pace, nothing happens. But if you lie down, we start the session right away. That's the idea. So and the theory is that directly the pacing will decrease and lying down actually increase. That's the, again, the theory of the system. It's, you know what, teaching a start button, you can say it that way, yes. Now, you know, if we are in there anyway, the interesting thing about start buttons is this. I've learned through in the marine mammal world, we always look for specific behaviors before we start the session. So we always are doing start button behaviors. The cool thing is that there have been people that actually started to teach it very black and white. Because if you ask me, hey Peter, what do you look at when you call your animals to you? I was like, yeah, that they show some type of attention. Yeah, but attention is a label for potentially 20 different behaviors. Now, what I find very, very cool, Carrie, that especially that you mentioned this, is that there are some trainers that teach the animals, if you look to the left, that is a start button for that I'm allowed to take a blood sample now. And I think that's very cool. So that's the next steps. But essentially, you know what, to go back to your question, yes, you're correct. Yes, and that's what we're trying to teach them. So I'm going to go through this with you a little bit. So what we first do is we teach the animals that a lie down is good. So what we are going to do is we find another place in the exhibit where pacing is less likely to happen. That's what we're going to do. Now we discover that's anywhere outside really. So pacing happens a lot inside, and that's where the history is at. So we're doing this now outside. So our goal is here, lie down behavior is reinforced heavily in comparison to other behaviors. So you lie down and reinforce you heavily. Like what I just explained with that balance of reinforcement. Lie down means bang. Here we go. So then we are loading the lie down behavior. We're loading it with reinforcement very heavily. And it's not like the well done. No, it's lie down and give a lot right away. So they understand, oh, if I lie down, it's the best thing in the world. Because you want the lie down behavior to overtake the pacing. Okay, that's what we're trying to do. Now, and that's, like you see, just reinforce, let's go. So then, from there, we teach the animal slowly that we, instead of like, we used a little bit of baiting here and there, but slowly that the signal with the tweezers down means lie down. Juist, en nu pak je een stukje, precies. So there you go. So what we've basically done is, normally we would grab some food, make them lie down. That's what the trainers did there. And then I said, okay, take the food away. We don't want to use baiting. We want to teach them a task. We don't want to do this. So we just asked them down with the tweezers, and then we grabbed food and reinforced them. So now you have that ABC structure again. So that's how we build it. So then, now this is like a lot of steps further. So you have to think about that. You sitting down with the bucket, the tweezers are going down. All of this stuff is part of you lie down. Now, then at one point, we kept on doing this, and at one point what happened was we had a breakthrough, and I'm going to show you that in a second. So, remember that first video of that pacing back and forth, and that was actually the hardest thing of this is you see that with animals that have traumas, you see that with animals that have histories on specific materials or people where they connect that to a traumatic experience. And that's where basic counter conditioning comes in, really. And that's super, super difficult. Now, the same here, that pacing has they have been doing this for 5 years or something. So that history of pacing is massive. How strong it is, I have no idea. I cannot ask. How strong that behavior is, I do not know. Which is very difficult. Now I can look at all the dog trainers out there too, who get dogs from shelters and so on. Respect to you guys, because same with the horses, same with the cats really, because there is a history somewhere. And that history you often don't know. So you also do not know how heavy it is, how much reinforcement is in place, how much trauma is in place. You do not know that. So that makes it very difficult. So anyway, so in this case, we didn't know that neither, but what I did know, if I just keep on reinforcing heavily this lie down, then eventually it will become a DRA to the pacing. So now I teach them, hey, look, you can pace what you want, be my guest. But if you lie down, we're going to interact with you right away. That's what we're going to do. So I'm going to show you. So there you see, so the animals start to lie down already. So the other one stands up. So we just wait. That one, the other one is reinforced for staying there. Line watches. So it's still a little bit of pacing, which is alright. And there you go. It lies down by itself. We wait because we also want to extend the duration of that lie down, right? So it's very peaceful now, which is very good. So one stays there. Maybe we should have reinforced that other line. It's alright. I'm gonna wait. So one is reinforced there already. She decides to lie down again. You know what? We're gonna reinforce you now. So you can directly see that the trainers are just doing their own life. Animals are lying down now, and now we created a DRA. A bit more peaceful. So we basically changed the narrative now. So all of a sudden, pacing weighs less heavy and lie down weighs more heavy, or heavier. Sorry for my English. Heavier. So the balance of reinforcement shifted towards the lie down now, and that's exactly what we wanted. This does not mean that pacing is gone completely. All right, the pacing is still there. We just teach them, hey, you have a choice to make right now. If you do this, this is what happens. If you do that, that's what happens. If that is a real true choice, it's questionable, because pacing, we don't reinforce you, we ignore you. Lying down is a reinforcer right away. So is it really a choice then? Questionable. Questionable. But what we did do was, hey, if you do this over this, we're going to reinforce that. So that's a differential reinforcement again. And because we teach them an alternative behavior, which we placed in the situation where they normally pace, there's a higher likelihood now they're going to lie down. And that's what basically happened. So it's very cool to see. So it might be a start button behavior, you're right, definitely. So we want to teach the animal without further signals. So we would just walk in, start our cleaning business, animals come in, whatever, and all we want them to do is like, hey, we're doing our cleaning business. When you lie down, you have a chance of reinforcement either after 10 seconds, maybe after 5 minutes, maybe after 2 minutes, and so on. So they can communicate this through the lie down behavior, which you just saw. So, differential reinforcement, this is based off the system where no signals are present and spontaneously occurring behavior occurs. Okay, so reinforcing one behavior over the other to increase the behavior you want to see more often. If this is incompatible, it's a DRI. If this is just another behavior, it's a DRO. If this is a learned behavior which they can choose by themselves, it's a DRA. And that's what we just did, essentially. So, is that then really a choice, yes or no, or did we just train them? There's your answer. I leave that to you. Same thing here. There you go. So he trained him basically. We trained the bird at DRA. Don't jump on my back. There's nothing. But if you go onto that pedestal, you can get a reinforcer. So choice is not. Therefore, I'm like, you know what? It's actually going very deep. We cannot just say choices all the time. If we don't understand, it doesn't mean that the choice was made. If choices are made because of different reasons, I cannot ask the animal the reason. I really can't. But most of them are due to unclear systems, training systems from us. Most of these choices are due to unclear training systems or forced choices. If you don't do this, you don't get this. If you don't come here, I don't reinforce you at all. But if we really go into a genuine choice, it's like, okay, do you want to do this? Yes, good, I reinforce you. You don't want to do it? Okay, here's a reinforcement. Because that's a true choice now. Hey, either they're equal outcomes for you. Do we ever do that? No, we don't. So how does baiting work in this whole system then? Well, baiting is essentially a training technique which the deliberate movement or placement of food is used to maneuver an animal to a desired location, to a target, to another exhibit, to a lie-down behavior, to you name it, basically. So that's how baiting works.
Ja.
There you go. Come here, come here, come here, come here, come here. Is a bit cute though. It is a bit cute. Alright, so, but the question then is from me, hey, you know what, everybody, baiting in a choice-based system, wait a second. So if I do this, hey tiger, come outside please, there's a piece of meat, come on, come here. But the tiger just either is afraid to go outside for whatever reason, doesn't want to go outside for whatever reason. Same for an animal that has to go into a transport box. Same for an animal that has to go outside if you're at home. Same for a horse that has to go back into its box. Same, all the same things. So I say, come here, luring, baiting, come here, come here, come here. Now, you already gave her what you have, right? So that's what you did. But the animal doesn't come. If the animal doesn't come, we don't reinforce it. Is that really a choice now? Is it, what would we do? We're not saying, come here, come here, come here, come here. You don't want to come? Okay, here's your food anyway. Which maybe we should do, because we should use another strategy in this case than using baiting, I think. But different experiences, which is fine. There's different ways to roam. But does it really work? That's questionable. So animal becomes crossed out when this technique is used for too long. So the animals are very focused on the food source. Very focused. I'm not saying it's not working. I'm just saying, hey, does it fit in a choice-based system? Questionable. Baiting keeps the animal thinking about the reinforcement or the treat. While targeting, and this is like, I really enjoy targeting, gets the animal thinking about the task. Especially if you're using baiting for too long or too much, right? I always think, hey, baiting is fine, luring is alright. It's not my preferable method, but sometimes you need to maybe, and that's okay. But we should not stay with that for too long. Your first, second approximation maybe fade it out right away so we can start asking tasks. All right. So same thing here with this beautiful camel. Was there same thing. We tried. I tried to say to the trainers, hey, you know what? See how you want to do it, and they decided to choose a lot of baiting. But that also means that you have to come with more and more reinforcers. So one leaf doesn't work anymore. I also have to have like big branches. So the biggest challenge with this technique is that we stay way too long on this approximation and conclude after a while behavior is finished. So people will still use a lot of come here, come in the transport box. Okay, close the gate. Okay, behavior's finished. The question is, can you do it next time again? And the time after again, is it reliable? That's the question really. So tip, fade out right after the first or second approximation. That's how I always think about it. So sure, you can use it. Hey, it's another way to go to Rome, how we say it. I prefer to use different strategies. Sometimes I feel like, I'm in situations where I do. There are also times that I think I don't, but I still do. So please don't get me wrong. So when could you use baiting then? Well, when an animal is showing hesitation of different areas, so going inside, outside, transfer box, and so on, maybe the first step might be luring baiting. Yeah, sure. When the animal has a strong negative history, that's a big one. That's maybe you really want to use it just to get them over that step, in one way or the other. So sure. Other techniques are better to be used if a strong behavior is required. So if you want a strong, reliable behavior, you want to step away from baiting after the first or second approximation, or not even start it at all. So asking a task creates more confidence. That's the idea. Now, baiting versus targeting. Let me talk a little bit more about this, because targeting is where we teach a task. Baiting is where the task is not requested. That's basically what we're doing, okay? So, when the animal understands the task, we create a language. That's what we do. So when the animal understands the task, we create a language, which is coming down to A, B, and C. I'm asking the behavior happens, then the reinforcement comes. Within baiting, that's not the case, because the animal is so focused on the food source that it's not busy with its environment. Now, I want the animal to be busy with an environment because I want the animal to make decisions. So, and I can do that by the ABC structure, so by asking a task. When the animal understands the task, we create a language between one another, which then, when a language is created, we're able to create more genuine choices, if the language is created well enough. And I'm talking about a very good training system. So, but for example, let me show you this. So this trainer, this is a chimpanzee. I'm not sure if you can see very well. This is a chimpanzee. So the animal is like, we discovered that the animal like wasn't very much into training until we decided, hey, you know what? Why don't you choose your own reinforcer? So we ask him, here, give me your hand, and then we say, okay, you pick. So it has 3 different cups. You choose. So there are choices made now. It's a very simple black and white thing. You point your finger at a cup, and that's the reinforcement you get. Now at the start we always thought it chooses the same one, but then we started to flip the script, flip the cups around, and it started to choose different things. So it's very cool to watch. But this is like one of the first first training sessions that she's doing. And one of the first things we train is, with the chimpanzees especially, in my experience, get control over these hands, because you don't want them to grab you. So just hold wherever I ask you to hold things. Now, and then she's asking, hey, what do you like? So the consequence is, you pick. Yeah, there you go, you pick. That one, all right. Now, same for this. This is in Sydney Zoo with Dean's team. Fantastic place. If you ever have a chance, go to Sydney Zoo. The training program is incredible. Beautiful. So, same thing here. Elephant is asked, lift your foot. Bridged. Then it's shown 2 frisbees. And each frisbee, you see the elephant looking. Each frisbee has a predictable reinforcer to it. So the animal actually chooses, hey, white frisbee is, I guess it's either pumpkin or a sweet potato, but it's always the same reinforcer. So it's either pumpkin or either sweet potato. There's no variation there. So the animal understands this disc touching means this, that disc touching means that. So there's the predictable choices you can make. But it's very simple choices. It's this or that. In case of the chimpanzee, it's this, or this. You pick. Which one do you want? You pick. So it's very simple choice. Instead of deciding, oh, you prefer to do this behavior, or you prefer to be with that animal, or you prefer to... That's very broad. It's very hard for us to understand that concept. So, yes, it's a decision, but what's the other outcome of that decision? It's difficult. It's very difficult. So then the question is, this is what I get asked a lot. When do you request a task? When do I request a cue? I'm a person that tries not to cue a lot. I'm just trying to have focus, and I'm cueing. So I'm gonna show you this video. I hope it's you can see it well. 2 wolves. I'm trying to work on both. It's one of the first times, so I have to pay a lot of attention to it. I have to look at it. Targets work quite well, but it's a little bit of a rough patch. Okay, so we're still working a bit of patience. You see, I have a little bit of control. That means, so this behavior means, give me your hip so I can do an injection with you. The other wolf, Blondie is her name, is on the nice target. So, but I'm also trying to figure out, okay, when can I ask? When can I ask, and when should I not ask? So, and that's the moment I just let them be for a little bit. So there you go. So jumping up, looking to the left. So I ask one, okay, you go down. The other one goes. I wait. Now. There the stick. Basically, I need your hip. So move your hip to the stick. That's the idea. And the target is move your nose to the target. So you can see again, this was a little bit like, what do you want me to do? What do you want me to do? Lie down. There you go. I asked the one on the left on the target. The other one is waiting. Maybe I should have reinforced. And now it moves his hip closer. There. And it stays. So you can see that, hey, it's all depending on when you request a behavior. It's not about, hey, do it. Oh, I didn't want to do it. No, wait a second. Did you ask the behavior at the right time for you to know if the animal would actually do the behavior? Yes or no? That's the question. Now, same thing here. So now we're going to try the other way. So we're going to say to one of them, stay there. The other one pays attention. Doesn't really want to do it. No problem. Happens. I'll wait. I ask again. Very poorly asked of me, really, because the animal's not really focused. So what am I trying to do? I should reinforce the other one a lot quicker. So then I was like, you know what? No problem. Oh, not ready. There, go lie down. Not ready yet. Go there. We ask you here, and there you go. There's a bit of peace, and there we go. So it's working. But what I'm trying to get at, really, what I try to get at is the moment you ask a signal and the animal does not respond, that's on the trainer, not on the animal. So the animal was probably unfocused for whatever reason. Animals be animals, and that's okay. But it's up to us to ask behaviors at the moment we think they're going to be 80-90% successful. If that's not the case, we shouldn't have asked it, but we cannot blame the animal for not responding properly. And I think often that's where we as trainers quickly would say, the animal didn't pay attention. No, the trainer didn't ask it at the right time for the animal to be successful. So it's our fault, not the animal. Now that's kind of what I really advocate for a lot. Like, hey, maybe we didn't ask it right. Same as what you see a lot, animals that leave the trainer and then the trainer is calling them back. And I always ask, what's the percentage? What's the success rate in percentage that the animal will respond and come back to you? Then it will say, well. I say, well, give me a percentage. Is it 50%? They say, no, less. I say, okay, 10%. Yeah, maybe something like this. So, okay, so 10% chance that the animal comes back. Why would you ask? Because what you do is the signal you give, animal's not responding, that weakens the signal as well because you can't reinforce. So it weakens that signal. So why would I ask them to call back and take the risk of weakening a signal? I don't want to do that. So you let them be. Is it safe for everybody? Yeah, okay, let them be. It's all right. So at one point, the question is, if it's a dangerous situation, I can imagine horses running off. I can imagine cats, dogs, and so on. You know what? You just keep on calling them back and whatever. Eventually, you have your dog back, and then just review your training program. I think that's how I would go with it. But one of the basics to remember is that behavior happens more often when we apply a reinforcer. It's very simple. Okay, it's very like capturing behavior, basically. Conditioned reinforcers create stronger relationships. Now, it's been said that, hey, surely prime or like food reinforcers, let's talk about this. Food reinforcers create relationships. Surely they do. But what's actually builds a stronger relationship is conditioned reinforcers, because now you really have to pay attention what the animal enjoys, like, for example, petting. Where does an animal like to be pet? So since I've been working with the orcas, what I do a lot with animals, find out, first of all, if they like to be pet, and second of all, what is the best position to be pet? So let's talk about a dog, for example. Is it behind the ears? Is it under the chin? Is it on the base of the tail? Is it on the inside of the legs? Is it on the belly? And just try to figure it out. And very quickly you feel like, oh, now they're leaning in. So I think I found the spot. And then I always do the 3-second rule. I stop for 3 seconds. If they put their body back into it, oh, well, there you got it. So that creates stronger relationships. So coming back to this whole system, when animals don't want to participate, there's a lot of reasons to it, okay? There's unclear signals, unclear criteria. So the animal doesn't really understand what it's asked for. So when you work in a team, one reinforces this, another reinforces this criteria, and those are not on the same page at all. Same for unclear signals. If I would say clap above my head means one signal and another trainer claps in front of their body, that's a very different signal for an animal, for example. So if we're too predictable, same thing, same reinforcers all the time, or same routine, for example. Not having fun. I'm a very big fan. I've learned on early days. Training should be fun for the trainer, fun for the animal. So if I do this, well done. Oh, that was great. Oh, very good. So I do not reflect that I have fun. I do not reflect that we're doing this together. I'm quite an energetic person, so I'm like, oh yeah, let's go. Let's have a party. Yes, you did a great job. I want to show you you've done well. So, and if I do that in variable ways, the animal starts to wonder, okay, what are we going to do next? And it wants to stay with me. So we want to have fun. Not enough variable sessions, same thing. There's a lot of trainers that start, for example, I want to train the blood sample, which is good behavior to have. But every single training session is a blood sample. It becomes super boring. There's not enough variability in these sessions. And what happens is the animal doesn't want to participate anymore. It's like, oh, we're going to do this again. You know what? I'm going to go for a walk. Because the predictability of that blood sample session, which for us is important, but for the animals actually it could be very boring because they just have to stand there or sit in a specific position for 5 minutes and that's it. Well, if you're training more higher energies and stuff, running, spinning around, jumping, it's actually a lot more fun. So therefore a blood sample is important, but it's very hard to do every single session of blood sample. It's very difficult for an animal to do. Poor reinforcement opportunities. Sometimes I reinforce here, but sometimes there. So my timing is very, very poor. Now, all of this, and the list goes on, but all of this, the animal is probably not going to be like, oh, it's pretty difficult to work with you, to work in a team with you, because it's not very clear to me what I want to do or what we need to do, really. So, which comes down to, like, if we want to be very successful, shorter sessions have more success. Multiple session is better than the length of the session, really. So at the same time, you also need to teach them that they have to participate for a little bit longer, especially if I have an ultrasound, which sometimes takes 15 minutes. I have to teach them 15 minutes of participation. But at the end of the day, short, successful sessions actually is a lot more successful. Sessions with a structure and a goal. You have a training plan. You have structure. You know what you're going to ask. You look at your environment. What am I going to do? What am I going to see? There's rain. There's a puddle. So I should not ask my dog to sit in that puddle. And you name it all. Plan, structure, goal, gets you success. And there's almost no to none the likelihood of an animal leaving you, really. Variable reinforcement schedules. I'm a very big fan. Changes of reinforcement, changes of positions, me running around, using conditioned reinforcers, changing it up all the time. I'm a very big fan of this. It creates curiosity for the animal to wanting to know what you have, which is quite fun to see the animal glow up. And then reflecting to have fun. I just explained about this. Stay consistent with criteria, because this is our language. The animal does not know our language. They have to learn this. So we have to stay consistent with this signal means this behavior, and this behavior looks like this, and that's the criteria. And that's how I can tell the animal, this, if you reach this criteria, then you have a chance of reinforcement. And that's essentially what we have to look into. So that's how we trainers as a team communicate. So for example, if these two dogs I just spoke about, with the family I live with, I found it very hard when I eat that dogs run around. So I want a bit of peace. So I just train them, sit on your own beds or stations. So it's very simple criteria for people that never train a dog in their life. Say, okay, if you lay in your bed, you get reinforced. If you don't, you don't. It's a very simple and very black and white criteria, which teaches the animal as well. If I do this, then this. It's very clear. Now, if we have the clarity very well for the animal, the language is a lot easier. Same for, we have to stay consistent with the signals. So if I have an animal and I have 100 nicknames for this animal, that's not helping your consistency with your signals, really. Especially when you use the name as a start of session signal, but you have a lot of nicknames. It's not going to help you. So at the end of the day, we're always at fault. The animal is always right. Choices are very hard to find out with the animal. What do they prefer, what not? The system has to be very structured and very good. So whether you understand their choices and decisions, yes or no, the animal is always right. Okay? Anyway, that was a lot of information for you. I've been over time a little, which I thought was going to happen anyway. I saw somebody talking about opt-in, opt-out. I have this discussion a lot, and this is all about like choice and control and all that stuff. I'm a big believer of the fact that if your session, your training is very clear, it's well structured, you have variable reinforcement in place, you make it fun for the animal, what is the reason for the animal to opt out? There should be none in my eyes. Zero. So that's why I don't focus on it. Nah. I'm going to be a little bit controversial to my own opinions. So, now, the whole point is this. There are times when animals get spooked or whatever. So now we can say that's an opt-out. Now, I also can teach animals to opt out. So I've seen a beautiful presentation and out in, what was it? I think it was in Florida, I think. And they had one of the dolphins that didn't really want to participate in the interaction programs. And then they discovered that they had some aggressive tendencies and stuff like this. And they trained the dolphin, if you touch the target at the end of the pool, then all the people will leave. So, and that's how the animal could opt out of that interaction if it wanted to. So in that case, sure, but it's not opting out of a training session and so on. It might be saying, you know what, I don't want to do this behavior, so I'm going to do this. So I can teach them that too. And I've trained this in another facility before where we had a fur seal which became a biter, which was terrible. But and we trained it to, hey, you know what, if I ask you any behavior and you decide to not do that behavior, you can always run into your pen and touch a target. So if you don't want to do this, you can make yourself correct by running in and touch a target. If that is an opt-out because of behavior I ask, if that is an opt-out because of a misunderstanding of cues, I do not know, but I gave the animal an opportunity to make themselves to place themselves in a reinforcing position. That's basically what I've done. So therefore, I'm a little bit like, oh, opt-in, opt-out. You know what? I find it an interesting system, but I believe if your session is fun enough, good enough, it's great, the animal is not bored, there's no reason for an animal to opt out, really. What do you do if the animal shows behavior like stereotype? So that's a very, very interesting one. So the first thing that I'm doing is figure out if it's anticipatory behavior, because very often, actually, it's not stereotypy, it's anticipatory. So I'm looking at if it's anticipatory or stereotypy. How do I do that? Is figure out all the triggers, which triggers that behavior of happening, and then looking at what maintains it. If I discover the trend just before feeding time, for example, let it be whatever, 10 o'clock in the morning, then it's anticipatory to that routine feeding time. That's not a stereotypy. So that's a lot, in my belief, a lot easier to fix than when you have stereotypy. Stereotypy, I prefer always to fix it through enrichment, because it's even though it's a repetitive behavior, it is actually happening through various moments in the day, which is not necessarily connected to a specific important time, such as feeding time, for example. So it happens a lot more over the day, and that's when I'm more focused on enrichment devices than that I'm focused on teaching them like those lions who did it as anticipatory behavior, teach them like that DRA, for example. But my first step is always, when does it happen? How long does it happen? How does the behavior look like? What is the trigger? What maintains the behavior? How often do I see that behavior? And then I'm applying actions. So it's a little bit differently. And with anticipatory behavior, I put a behavior management program in place. While with stereotypy, I look into the needs of the animals. And 9 out of 10 times the needs are not met. But then when you apply strategies to reach the needs, all of a sudden the stereotypy already directly decreases. Is then asking attention from the animal correct, or wait the animal to offer attention and then reinforce it, or a mixed approach? I work with both systems in different places. This all depends on your goals really, but I prefer if the animal doesn't focus on me whatsoever. Let's use the wolves that I showed you, which I was training. I can discuss now with myself, with anybody, that hey, the default behavior or the focus behavior or the control behavior is actually not very strong. And I need to teach them this. I need to teach them, hey, just be with me. Be with me for whatever. You have to stay with me unless more information is given. That might be a reinforcer, that might be a play, that might be I request the behavior, and so on. So I don't really teach animals to, hey, pay attention again. Hey, pay attention and put it on cue. I should be the cue to stay with me unless asked differently after a start of session signal is given. That's my approach, really. Sometimes there are times when I'm like, hey, you know what? I work with multiple trainers, multiple animals and stuff. Hey, there are safety situations where I need to grasp the attention of the animal quickly so the outcome is not a bigger mess. So it's sometimes a bit situational in these cases. I hope that makes sense. Study about species not enough domesticated. Alpacas are bullshit for me. It looks that two of them like tactile, although the study says that alpacas are. You know what? I don't look at all that stuff. I don't really read all of those things. And maybe I should not. I'm a very big behavior observer. I just look. I just see. I believe that when I show up to an exhibit, the first thing that I do, the animal doesn't know me yet. All I'm doing is I amp up the rate of reinforcement, and the first thing I'll do, I'll grab primary reinforcers, and regardless if an alpaca likes it or not because of the species, I will not touch you. I will just try to reinforce you right away in that sense. With the dog, it's differently. The dog, I like the dog to approach me before I approach them. And then I'll slowly figure out. Very often you already see the animal moving its body into your hands and stuff, so that's a different story. But 9 out of 10 times I show up, I just have my food with me and I directly say, thank you, thank you, thank you, and then I build up. Regardless if it says, an animal is prone to tactile, yes or no. Like for example, a rhino, they say with them as well, or now I forgot the name, a tapir, for example, if that makes sense. So I'm a very observable person. I'm a very big into trigger behavior consequence. And I also try to figure out, hey, that just happened in the environment. What did the animal just do? Hey, wait a second, that trainer just did that. What happened now? So I'm a very big into that part. How would you suggest creating the idea of having fun in the session with more skittish animals? Thinking of our foxes I work with. So, well, first of all, the animal has to be comfortable with you before you're going to change stuff. But at the same time, I've worked with trainers that started to train their mini pigs like this. Hey, you're okay. Come here. And then I come in and I'm talking normally. I say, hello, how are you? And they already left. Then I think, okay, but we create them to be that way as well. So I also can create them to have fun with me. So obviously, don't get me wrong, it's a process. So you don't just go in and woohoo, here we go. It's a process, really, So, and especially with foxes, I work with foxes a little bit as well. In our case, again, behaviorally, surely there's species differences, but from a behavior standpoint, there's a lot of like counter conditioning involved as well. So yeah, don't get me wrong, but what you can do is you can change the way you provide the reinforcement. Instead of like through the tweezers, I can also throw it at them. I can throw a lot in front of me. I can use different type of reinforcers. We used eggs, for example, and I use liver and then meat, and I can change a lot of stuff there as well. So might an animal get more eager train when given the option between multiple reinforcements since they have to board it? Yeah, so in the case of that chimpanzee we actually tried to do the variable reinforcement, the animal not knowing. That didn't work at all. So you eat cucumber now, great. I'm using cucumber in my training session. Doesn't work. Oh, now you're eating tomato. Let's use tomato tomorrow. Doesn't work. And we were like, what are we gonna do? So that training said, you know what? Why don't we let him choose? Let's find out. And we did that. And within 1 session, 2 sessions, bang, he was all in. So I think it's very individual. This is just one of those that I discovered it was that way, and I haven't seen them much since. So it's an interesting case. How do you teach an alternative behavior? If the undesirable behavior is automatic reinforcing, if we ignore it, it is still reinforcing, like a cat eating a plant. Well, the thing is, the question is first, and that's where I always go into, why is it eating the plant? Is there a nutritional deficiency? That's question number one. Is it a stereotypy? Is there enough things to do in the house itself? What else is there? So before I go, same for those lines, before we go into that, we have to first ask ourselves a whole lot of questions before we apply the DRA. And it's the same for the cat. So in zoological facilities, we first say, okay, you know what, wait a second. What's happening here? So the same for, I work with at a place that had 3 Eurasian brown bears, and one of them kept on waving. And eventually I said, okay, you know what? All we're going to do is, first of all, don't throw food when they wave, but all we're going to do is we're going to try to replicate their foraging needs. And their foraging need is, when they're awake, they say they eat about 200,000 blueberries a day or something, which is tons. So it's like, okay, so they have to forage a lot. They forage about 50-60% of their days. So, and in their case, they almost didn't do that. So all we did was increase foraging and the waving was gone. That's all we did. So we didn't really apply a DRA in that case. There's a lot of options there, really. So same thing for your cat. I don't think I would go that road, but I would first think about what the reason is. Maybe there's something in the plant it's missing, maybe, and then go on, basically. Does fun or variety animals need not to not participate in a procedure like blood draws? This is where I was wondering about opt-out options. Well, the thing is this. So this is what I find very, very difficult. So opt out for a blood draw. What if the blood draw is needed? You have to have it right now, and especially with, for example, I bring the dog to the vet. And the vet says we need a blood sample to see if whatever it has is a problem. But the dog says to me, I'm opting out. I don't want to do the blood. It's like, okay, but we need to have it. Because I'm also, as a client, I'm paying for it. So opting out in a blood sample is very difficult there. Now, in the zoological facilities, we can do that if we want to, because if not tomorrow, we do, or if it's not today, we do tomorrow, and so on. But the problem is, at one point, we need the blood. We need it. So is then an opt-out for the blood a very smart thing to do? It's discussable. I'm not giving an answer here. It's questionable. Same for us, we need to do the vaccinations. Have to happen. But the animal tells me, I don't want to do it. Yeah, but it has to happen right now. Yeah, but I don't want to do it. Are we now going to say we don't do it? Or we say, no, vaccination has to happen for your own good? No, you pick. That's the hard one. So that's why I'm not a big fan of, hey, should we really apply that into our medical training, yes or no? It's maybe me saying I'm not a big fan is not the right word, but there's a lot of discussions there, I think. Yeah, so that's the thought process I have according to those. Which is hard, but this is what I'm trying to say too. So we have a lot of people, and I thank you so much for coming. But you have people from zoological facilities, like people from Toronto Zoo, people from other places. So what basically happens is, you have the vet there now. In many zoological facilities, there's a head vet. There is a vet on site. With people that are not in zoological facilities and they have to go to a vet, or the vet comes to you because you have a couple of horses, you have to pay for this, So, and if now the animal says I'm opting out for the blood, and then tomorrow you have to have the vet coming again, yeah, you're paying again. So it's like, okay, are you willing to take that? Yes or no? Well, that's another discussable point, really, at the end of the day. So it's not as simple as, oh, let's teach them an opt-in, opt-out on a blood sample vaccination or any medical behavior. There's a lot more to discuss right there for the animal's own good, really. So yeah, are there any more questions from you guys? I hope you guys really like enjoyed it, learned something. Make sure you actually click on this beautiful link. I'm going to share it again for you. Click on that link and get your spot at the creating a shaping plan. There's a lot of information out there how we create a shaping plan. This is how it should look like. You have here creating a shaping plan. I put on $9.99 for you guys. It used to be $35. I changed the whole thing for you. So go to that link up on top. I think I shared it with you guys. Go there, have it, look at it, ask me anything you want about this, and then hopefully you guys are learning a whole lot more, hopefully. Thank you, Dwayne, for being there. It was actually very nice having you around. You're very, very welcome. Thank you so much, you too, Benjamin, for coming again and supporting me so much. I really appreciate it. And I will see you hopefully next time. Thank you very much. Bye bye.